In the last couple of years, Georgia's won two national championships. And in that time, there have been a few games where Georgia's been able to sort of save themselves. Not a lot of games, but a couple. And I'm wondering, as we head into 2023, is this program going to be able to save itself like it did against Ohio State, to some degree, like it did against Missouri? Is it going to be able to absorb a loss the way that it did against Alabama in 2021? Are all those things still out there? Is it still possible to do that? Because we've seen a defense in that time that has just held its own for the most part, and waited for the offense to get its bearings. That's what happened in really in all three of those scenarios. I know they weren't all three games, but if you think about it, in the Ohio State game, Ohio State got out really to a good start for sure, and then Georgia came back, and then by the end of the third quarter, though, it looked like the game was over. It looked like Ohio State had zoomed past the Dogs, but Georgia just didn't stop, eventually coming back to win that game by a point. In the Missouri game, and in both games, by the way, the offense made, mistakes that were hard to come back from. When you think about the interception that led directly to an Ohio State touchdown, if you don't have that, Georgia goes into the half with a lead against Ohio State. And then you talk about the Missouri game, with just sort of consistent errors and injury too, to be honest. Those were all things that really got in Georgia's way. Are they going to be able in 2023 with a new quarterback, with so many guys departed again for the NFL? I mean, that does add up at some point. Are they going to be able to handle all of that? I don't know. I think it's a good question. I think one thing about the 23 season, I keep saying 24, I'm sure. I think one thing about the 23 season is there's just not an obvious game where, particularly early, where you're like, oh, they better get ready quick or they're going to be in trouble. You wouldn't have thought that about the Missouri game. That was game 5, I think. And it turns out that was a game they had to save themselves. And those games happen on the road in this league. You think about the 2004 Georgia-South Carolina game where Georgia goes into that game and gets down 16-0 and has to come back to win. They win 20-16. David Green did not play well that night. On the road in this league, it's challenging. And the Tennessee game sticks out for sure. They're also playing at Auburn, so there's some possibility you could have trouble on the road anywhere in the league. But is Georgia going to have the wherewithal? Are they going to have what you need to climb back and win games? I mean, one road game is at Vanderbilt. That's not going to be a problem, you wouldn't think. Obviously, they play in Jacksonville, which is not a road game. So you got Auburn, Vanderbilt, Tennessee on the road. And in the league, that's it. So which one is going to catch their attention the most. I don't know. Hey, make sure you're taking advantage of our offer from Doordash, where you're going to get 50% off your first order. And that's using the code DAWGPOSTSUMMER. Take advantage of it now. I was talking about how they have Brewsters. They'll deliver Brewsters. That's amazing to me. So it's really hot. You didn't even want to get out in the Georgia heat. We were at the, I guess that's Epps Bridge, over there by all the Oconee part of the area. But anyway, use that code DAWGPOSTSUMMER. The link is down below. It's 50% off your first order with Doordash. Georgia, when they were really fighting to find themselves on the road against against Mizzou and Columbia, that was really a major test. And as it turns out, they didn't have to win that game. As it turns out, they still would have won the national championship. They just had to win every other game that they played, which they did. But that Mizzou game, that night, I mean, they saved themselves for sure. Nobody played well. I mean, the Missouri kicker did. But, Georgia ate a bunch of injuries that night too. And that's the thing about it. was one thing after another. Here's an image from that game that Ryan wrote this story, and he says that cold Saturday night in October ended up being the game that tested the makeup of these Georgia Bulldogs. Were they built to be champions? As it turns out, the answer is yes. They were champion. They were built to be champions. And at the end of the game, this is the fumble from Kendall right here that it felt like they had started taking control of that game. Try to get this right. It's much harder to do this than you would think. Pick this up today, Double Dogs, and you'll get our 2023 season preview included for free. I've really not shown the preview very much lately, but this guy right here is going to have a lot on him. It's going to be up to Carson or whoever the starting quarterback is. I'm assuming it's going to be Carson Beck. It's going to be up to him to guide this team and make sure that they're taking advantage of all they've got. And we're going to see. But at some stage, Georgia's going to get tested in ways that, the Missouri game was really about fighting. They were fighting themselves most of that night. Against Ohio State, I'm not sure I would say that. They were fighting a team that was really good. Probably the third best team in the country. Fourth, maybe. And they, Ohio State really played well. But Ohio State couldn't get past its own problems. They were outcoached in the fourth quarter. To be sure, they were outcoached in the fourth quarter. I thought Ohio State, in many ways, was outcoaching Georgia in the first half. But really, they were so obviously outcoached in the fourth quarter that all that was wiped away. So that it isn't. Coaching doesn't matter in game coaching. There's only so many games that Georgia plays where in-game coaching matters because they're so much better than everybody else that they play typically. But in that game, they were facing someone who was their peer in terms of talent, maybe not in terms of depth. And it really caught up to Ohio State when Georgia kept throwing waves of guys at them. And, I thought Ryan Day was really coached timidly in the fourth quarter. I did not understand the last drive, which should have never happened anyway. That was on Stetson. But are these guys going to be able? The thing that was so impressive about Stetson Bennett was that he had the ability to have something bad happen to him and essentially forget it immediately. You could see that on the field. That's something that not much bothered him visibly. And in athletics, that matters a lot because sometimes when you can see the other guy get angry, you are not always going to have the game go the way that you plan it to go. There's no way either Ohio State or Georgia or Missouri or Georgia in those two situations thought that they would be in the position that they were in at the end of those games. I mean, Ohio State was up 17 or whatever it was, 18. And they lost that game. Like, that's hard to imagine losing a game like that. But they did. Missouri, really, I don't know that they dominated the first half because of playing well enough and Georgia's mistakes, which Missouri should get credit for. But they were just, it was just a landslide in the second half, particularly in the fourth quarter. So you got to be prepared for everything. And what Stetson had the ability to do, and I think that Carson has the capability to do this too, just from seeing him play in high school and what he's done at Georgia. The ability to have something not go your way and pick up the pieces to win. Those are the biggest wins. The biggest wins are when you don't play well. that's when you've done it the right way as an athlete and as a program and so forth. And we're going to see that's one question that I have coming into this season is, can these guys get it going when things aren't going well?